Welcome to our channel, where we explore the darkest corners of history. Today, we're going to examine one of the most infamous serial killers in American history, the BTK Killer, Gary Ridgway. Early life and crimes. Gary Leon Ridgway, known as the BTK Bind, Torture Kill Killer, was born on February 18, 1949, in Salt Lake City, Utah. His early life seemed normal, with a loving family and a stable home environment. However, beneath the surface, Ridgway struggled with dark impulses and a growing sense of anger. Ridgway's family moved to Washington State when he was a child, and he grew up in the small town of Auburn. He was a quiet and introverted child, often keeping to himself. Ridgway's parents, Mary and Thomas Ridgway, were strict disciplinarians, and Gary often felt stifled by their rules. As Ridgway entered adolescence, his anger and frustration began to manifest. He developed a fascination with violence and sex, often fantasizing about binding and controlling women. This dark fixation would eventually drive him to commit heinous crimes. Ridgway's criminal career began in the early 1970s, with a series of burglaries and peeping Tom incidents. He would break into homes, often stealing small items and watching women through their windows. This behavior escalated, and Ridgway began to commit more serious crimes, including rape and murder. In 1971, Ridgway married his high school sweetheart, Claudia Craig. The marriage seemed happy, but Ridgway's dark impulses continued to grow. He began to frequent sex workers and developed a fascination with sadomasochism. Ridgway's first known murder occurred in 1974, when he killed Joni Roberts, a 21-year-old sex worker. Over the next decades, he would go on to murder at least 10 women, earning the nickname BTK for his modus operandi: binding, torturing, and killing his victims. The BTK Killer. Gary Ridgway's reign of terror as the BTK Killer lasted for over 2 decades. From 1974 to 1991, during this time, he murdered at least 10 women, mostly sex workers and runaways. Ridgway's methods were brutal and calculating, earning him a place among the most notorious serial killers in history. Ridgway's victims were often vulnerable and marginalized women, whom he would target and manipulate. He would bind them with rope or tape, torture them, and then kill them. Ridgway's crimes were highly ritualized, with a focus on control and domination. The BTK Killer's first known victim was Joni Roberts, a 21-year-old sex worker, who was found dead in 1974. Over the next several years, Ridgway claimed multiple victims, including Marcia Chapman, Opal Mills, and Cynthia Hines. The police were baffled by the lack of evidence and the seemingly unrelated victims. In the 1980s, Ridgway's crimes escalated, and he began to taunt the police with letters and cryptic messages. He signed his letters BTK, which stood for bind, torture, kill. The police were unable to catch him, and Ridgway continued to murder and terrorize the community. Ridgway's ability to evade capture was due in part to his normal and unassuming appearance. He was a married man with a steady job and a family, and he blended in seamlessly with his surroundings. This facade of normalcy allowed him to hide his dark impulses and continue his reign of terror. Investigation and capture. The investigation into the BTK Killer's crimes spanned decades, with the police facing numerous challenges and setbacks. The killer's ability to evade capture and his lack of discernible motive made him a formidable foe for law enforcement. In the 1970s and 1980s, the police collected evidence from various crime scenes, including DNA samples and fingerprints. However, the technology at the time was not advanced enough to link the evidence to a specific suspect. The case went cold, and the police were left with few leads. It wasn't until 2000 that the BTK Killer resurfaced, sending a letter to the police claiming responsibility for the murders. The letter included a floppy disk containing a cryptic message. The police were able to trace the disk to a computer at Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita, Kansas, where Ridgway was a member. They obtained a search warrant and found evidence linking Ridgway to the crimes, including a draft of the letter he had sent to the police. On February 25, 2005, Ridgway was arrested and charged with the murders. He was subsequently linked to the crimes through DNA evidence and confessed to the murders. The investigation and capture of the BTK Killer were a testament to the persistence and determination of law enforcement. The case highlighted the importance of advancements in forensic technology and the need for continued vigilance in pursuing justice. Trial and sentencing. In 2005, Gary Ridgway was finally arrested and charged with the murders of 4 women. As the investigation continued, more evidence came to light, and Ridgway eventually confessed to killing 49 women. His trial began in 2007, and it was one of the most highly publicized cases in American history. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, including DNA matches, witness testimony, and Ridgway's own confessions. The defense argued that Ridgway was a victim of circumstance and that his crimes were a result of a traumatic childhood. However, the jury rejected this argument and found Ridgway guilty of 49 counts of murder. In 2007, Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing was a relief to the victims' families, who had waited decades for justice. Ridgway's sentence was seen as a victory for the justice system, and it brought closure to the community. During his trial, Ridgway showed no remorse for his crimes, and he continued to maintain his innocence. However, in a shocking turn of events, Ridgway eventually confessed to the crimes and apologized to the victims' families. This confession was seen as a rare moment of honesty from a serial killer. Ridgway's case raised questions about the justice system and how he was able to evade capture for so long. It also highlighted the importance of forensic evidence and DNA testing in solving crimes. Today, Ridgway remains in prison, serving his life sentence. Conclusion: the BTK Killer's case is a chilling reminder of the darkness that exists in our world. Gary Ridgway's reign of terror lasted for decades, but ultimately, justice was served. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content.